So without further ado, I'm going to ask Sal and Roy to come to the stage and they'll get started.
Okay. Okay, good afternoon, everybody. I'm waiting for a second here for Sal. Okay, in the meantime, we'll begin. So I'm Roy Harris, and work with STEM Happens Network, Vice President of Professional Development. Sal should be here in a moment, but in the meantime, what we're going to do is we have had 3 great days, okay, of presenters, okay, that have really been talking about integrated STEM. Okay, Sal, here you are. Introduce
Hi,
yourself.
good afternoon, good evening, good morning, wherever you're at. We are so happy that you're here with us. My name is Sal Fernandez. I am the President and CEO of STEM Happens Network. And Roy, please
I
take it
already
over.
introduced myself.
Yes.
And what we're going to do, as I just said, we've had 3 great days of great presenters talking about integrated STEM. So in the next 30 minutes, what we're going to be doing here is bringing you through, okay, great schools, how you can build great schools through integrated STEM. So give me one moment. Let me share my screen here. Get the presentation going here. And here we go. So, as I said, it's going to be building great schools through integrated STEM. And in today's world, what we're going to be talking about is physical learning versus remote learning. Because we know, especially in the past few months, that a lot of the physical learning has unfortunately had to cease, and we have now developed a lot of remote learning. But no more than ever, we need to create a STEM workforce. However, students often say, school is boring, or when will I ever use it? We hear that all the time. Unfortunately, so many of the methods we use to teach in today's world are the same teaching methods we used in the 1950s. For the past few months, we've all been involved, as I said a moment ago, in remote learning during this COVID-19 pandemic crisis. Has remote learning made teaching and learning any easier or more exciting for the students? Has it really made our students think out of the box? Or has it been a glorified worksheets handed out to us students remotely to do their work at home? Think about your answer. And as I move on, you can actually just put some of your comments in the discussion box. Like if you really think that remote learning has been working or it hasn't been working, or some of your own thoughts on it. The SHN team, okay, we believe in the importance of integrated STEM and how to develop and implement an integrated STEM unit plan using the literacy and the numeracy standards and aligning them with the NGSS standards. This will change how students view school, whether it is in person or it is remote, and may help them see the connections across all subject areas. This is the goal we must strive for as we look forward to the 2020-2021 school year. Okay, whether we're going to be teaching remotely, physically, or a hybrid of the two. And if we follow the news at this point, it looks as though it's probably going to be a hybrid in a number of cities, a number of places across, the States and maybe other countries, but we'll find out. And that's where we have to be ready for both the remote and the physical. In the next few slides, okay, we are going to give you a very brief, and it's going to be a brief overview of the components and the necessary tools to begin the development of an integrated STEM unit. But please feel free to contact Sal, Kelly, or myself for a much more in-depth presentation and how you can have your teacher teams develop an iSTEM unit, which consists of all the content areas. And here we go. The use of the iSTEM science notebooking. This is probably one of the most important things to do. I've always believed in science notebooking, and science notebooking should be, whether it's physically or whether it's remotely. Okay? As I say here, science notebooking should always be part of the process, okay, whether it's that online notebook or the physical notebook used in a school, or even a combination of both. We want our students to read, write, think, and draw like a scientist. Super important. It is keeping notebooking. It becomes archives of the student work. It becomes, we really can sort of use it as an incredible formative assessment for the students. So it's something that should be set up at the very beginning of school with all your students. This is very important to understand here on this slide, that an integrated STEM unit plan across a content area, they are not individual lesson plans. And in the next few minutes, I'm going to be showing you an actual unit. And you have to realize that it is a unit. It's the teachers who develop the lesson plans from the unit. Okay, as we say here, teachers will be developing their own lesson plans based on this iSTEM unit. And they add suggestions to the connections in the unit. Okay, the iSTEM unit, when it's developed by a team, it's developed in conjunction with NGSS, math, literacy, and engineering standards. The iSTEM unit, across all the content areas, it's basically a roadmap for the teachers to plan their individual lessons, integrating the content, which is the science, the literacy, math, and the technology standards. But another important aspect here, the science curriculum it's that hook. It's that hook, we say, because that's what we're developing that unit from. And whatever the curriculum is, remember there's many different curriculums out there, okay? There can be Amplify, Insights, It's About Time, PBI Sci, McGraw-Hill Insights, Pearson, Discovery Education Textbook, and many, many other really good science curriculums that can be utilized, and that becomes your hook for many of the topics and many of the resources. But it's in every good science lesson or in an iSTEM unit, you should not just rely on, quote, the curriculum, okay? It's other resources that teachers should be utilizing to make the unit very substantial, to make their students engaged. I know as a science teacher, I used many, many different sources to get all these incredible projects for my students. And we should always do that, look sort of out of the box where we can get our students really engaged. I'm going to go through now a few of the components of the iSTEM unit plan. And you're going to see some of these also when I show you the actual unit, which we're going to be changing over to a Word document in a few minutes. And here you have in the iSTEM unit plan, okay, it's going to contain the following resources aligned to NGSS. Storylines and phenomena, engineering design challenges, numeracy and literacy connections, interim assessments, formative and summative assessments, and final assessments. That should all be part of this iSTEM unit plan. Then, and we'll show you again in a moment on the Word document, you should have the NGSS, the literacy, and the math standards. Okay? You need 4 documents in there. You need the middle, on this particular one, and it's specific because the unit I'm going to show you is a 6th grade unit on Earth systems. So therefore, and it's for middle school. So therefore, this particular one is going to have middle school NGSS Earth systems from NGSS, middle school engineering design standards from NGSS, the literacy standards that align with it for middle school, as well as the math, technology, and engineering standards that align with NGSS. But remember, this is for middle school. If I were to do an elementary school, okay, in a unit, it's obviously going to be looking at the elementary NGSS standards. If I'm going to do a high school, the same thing. Or if I'm going to do a middle school, say life science, okay, I'm going to take it from that aspect of it. So what we're going to do now, and as I switch over, it's going to take me hopefully about only 20 seconds. We're going to switch over for a few minutes to actually look at a 6th grade integrated STEM unit, as I mentioned, on Earth systems, STEM unit of study. And this was developed by the SHN team in collaboration with the Milwaukee Public School team. And as I mentioned before, this particular unit is on Earth systems. So give me 1 second and let me go. Here we go. And you should be seeing in front of you right now a document, that's a Word document that says the STEM Happens Network, sample 6th grade unit 1 on Earth systems. And I'm going to sort of bring you through this. Some of the things we've done, and some of them are going to be new. So we felt that the first important thing, the first page, should be an introduction. And the introduction is explaining that explaining the whole concept of it, explaining that it's across the content area. It's been developed for teachers based on the NGSS standards, of course, aligning with literacy, math, and engineering standards. And then, of course, we say to you, as we mentioned before, the next paragraph says it's important to understand, okay, this is an iSTEM unit plan. It is not individual lesson plans. It's not lesson plans for teachers. Remember that teachers are going to be developing their own lesson plans. So it's important when they get this that teachers should have this introduction. And then, of course, obviously, as we said before, future, resource of lessons developed by teachers will become part of the document that sort of becomes like a living document that other teachers can start using and utilize the lessons that they all developed and they all collaborated on. In this particular one here, we talk about when we worked with the Milwaukee team, they used the Discovery Education Textbook. So in this particular one, that's going to become the hook. But depending your school system, depending your district, you may, as I mentioned before, you may be using Amplify, you may be using Insights. There's so many different great curriculums out there, and that's how you design this particular document. Okay, and then of course I have here the storylines and the the phenomena, the engineering design, numeracy, interim assessments, formative, summative assessments, final assessments. Okay, this is all in there that I discussed before. We talk about anchoring phenomena. When you get this and you'll have access to this document, you can easily click on this link and you can find some great anchor phenomena. Okay, that's talked about. And remember, phenomena should be an observable event, demonstration, or process that generates questions from the students. And actually, in the previous, if you were watching Stephen Pruitt, he actually talked about how COVID is such a great phenomena now. And it is in terms of the understanding of this is something, the engagement of kids right now, because it's affecting all our lives in so many different ways. As I mentioned, go down to the next one. Science notebooking should be always part of the process. Again, we want our kids to read, write, think, and draw like a scientist. And then, depending upon the curriculum you're using, there may be some important notes to put in for some changes that will be within your own curriculum. And then, obviously, the last part of this is the same thing I mentioned before. Okay, there are 4 documents, and that's what we're going to go through now. The first one is the actual middle school NGSS Earth Systems from the NGSS standards, and that is because this is middle school Earth, and from NGSS Earth Systems, but it could be changed if it's elementary school or if it's life science or it's high school. And it gives you the 4 different documents. Let's go now to the first one. And here, obviously, is the exact document from NGSS, which on it, it's your Earth Systems document 1, and you see you see what the student should be expected to do. Okay, you see these SEPs, which are the science and engineering practices. You see the the DCIs, which are the disciplinary core ideas, and the CCCs, which are the cross-cutting concepts. Then as you go down, you'll notice like right over here, you'll be able to actually see where the connections are for literacy and where the connections are for math. And we're going to get to that in a minute to show you some more specifics. Then we go here, the next document 2 is the engineering design from NGSS and for the middle school. And here is this document here that's right in front of you that you'll have access to. And then, let me go back for a second. I showed you before here in the Earth Systems document, and I think you can see my mouse moving around here, is that by the ELA and the math, they give you the standards that are specific to this particular, for this particular Earth Systems from NGSS. What we've done here is we've given now on document 3, here are all the literacy standards, the connections that go to middle school, okay? They're all here. You have your reading standards, you have your reading informational text, your writing standards, and your speaking and listening. But if you notice, we've only underlined a few of them. And those few which are underlined, RST 681 over here, then you have going down, writing is WHST 682. And that's because those are the standards that are applicable to this particular NGSS Earth Systems that we're working on. But all these are all the literacy standards in general that are used for middle school. Then the same thing, speaking and listening. You can also see it the same way we've underlined SL 8.5 only for Earth Systems, but remember there's other speaking and listening standards which are used in other, maybe in living in life science or other particular topics that are being done. And it says here the bold underlined standards represent standards to be recognized in the unit. The next document 4 are the math standards. The same thing. Just looking at it, here are all the math standards, the same thing. You look down, the underlined ones are applicable. As I'm going to move down. And now we go right to the unit plan. Okay, this is where the the iSTEM unit plan begins. And notice what we have here. And you'll be able to have this template. Okay, the essential question, really important. Okay, keep it visible to the students during the whole unit. Always keep it up there. As this one, as humans continue to build over natural environments, how can we use what we know about Earth spheres to create devices to protect the environment from pollution? Okay, that stays up there the whole time. And then you have an anchor phenomena. Okay, the anchor phenomena in this case You can read it as I read it to you. In many cities and towns, a large part of the land is used to build houses, businesses, and factories. With many of these structures, driveways and parking lots are required. As towns and cities grow, a number of roads are constructed linking the citizens around the town and to the towns beyond the community. As concrete, asphalt, and other buildings materials replace green areas, stormwater moves quickly, often causing damage to the town infrastructure. The stormwater runoff also transports many pollutants to local streams and the rivers, impacting the watershed. So that's your anchor phenomena. Okay, then we have the focus questions. Now, this is important. The focus questions can be a lot. At the end of this document, I'm going to show you we have many focus questions, which we gave suggestions. It's really great for teachers, of course, as they develop their lessons to get their own focus questions. They feel important. But here we break this down into plate tectonics, energy transfer and water cycle, and relationship between Earth and organisms, and the focus questions are underneath it. Then you have the overview. Okay, the overview, you have Earth systems. Okay, is the topic, the unit and date. Okay, on this one, we say approximately 7 weeks. Could be a little shorter, it could be a little longer. That's where the team works on it, the teachers work on it, and they work for what months they think it should be. And then here would be a brief description of the unit. Next is really important. It's called the misconceptions. All great curriculums will give you in the curriculum misconceptions. And it's not just the students. Sometimes the teachers have misconceptions. And it's really important to lay out a lot of these misconceptions in here. Next is vocabulary. Okay, these are just for what we did here is we listed a few of the tier 1, tier 2, tier 3 words for to used in this unit. But remember something, okay? It's only a few of the words. There are so many more vocabulary words. And obviously, I always say about tier 3 words, okay, you're not going to go home tonight, have dinner with your family and talk about geosphere, hydrosphere, plate tectonics, and transpiration. Okay, those are words used commonly in content areas, but this would be a much larger list. Okay, and just to show you very quickly, and I'm going to just go through weeks 1 and 2 over here, but everything else is on here, and I'll scroll down, but here we give, basically we say, okay, weeks 1 and 2, they're going to do plate tectonics. We give them an overview of the land in motion. Here you have the curriculum, which tells you different activities from the curriculum that the teachers can look at and develop their lessons. We give them a list of different external activities, such as news, LA articles, some great YouTube videos, some other places they can find, but the same thing. Teachers do their best way in researching their own lessons, and they can find some great stuff. And we just give the suggestions, and then we give them from the particular curriculum, we give them the engineering and design connections. Okay, many of them are in the textbook, in this particular case, or in the curriculum, and many may be in great other things we put up down here, for example, such as try engineering or teach engineering. Those are great free resources. Sometimes you have teachers pay teachers. We put that in. That's for some teachers like to use it. PBS is another great free resource. Therefore, you're going to get incredible, great stuff of great PBLs, problem-based learning activities that can be used for these engineering and design connections. And then obviously you have your formative, and then you have your summative assessments that are going to be from the curriculum where the teachers develop it on their own. And just to go down, weeks 3 and 4, it goes in the same format. Here it is, energy transfer and water cycle. We go down to now weeks 5 and 6, the same format here. We go down, we give the same, activities. The teachers look at this, they develop their own lessons, they get their engineering and design connections. We give some suggestions, but being that teachers are so creative, they can find so many of their own great engineering connections. And then, of course, the last week here is the final summative assessment activity where they're going to create a PBL project with engineering connections as well as addressing the anchor and phenomena questions. And here's some ideas we give them. We then give the ELA connections, social studies connections, health connections, art connections, music connections. Here's always a post-lesson reflection. What worked well? Where can the unit be improved for next time? And then, of course, an appendix we put in, along with, these are the focus questions. As I said before, it's a lot of them. And here you have a 5E instructional model lesson plan, integrated model lesson planning template that you can utilize to actually, teachers can utilize to develop their lesson. And that is right here, and you'll have access to all this. Okay, and what I'm going to do now is just go back to the PowerPoint, and we'll finish it up. And we switched over there. And here we have the SHN, okay, cycle of learning roadmap that leads to an integrated STEM culture. And you can sort of see this, the essentials of integrated STEM, digging into that unit plan, going into the standards, assessment, the text complexity we talked about before, a framework for teaching, digging into the lesson plan, and the cycle goes around. We then go into that essentials, as we discussed, of that iSTEM unit, the integrated STEM, the standards, the NGSS, the math, the literacy standards, the engineering, the technology. Important to talk about disciplinary literacy. That's a whole other topic we can get into with you another time. And of course, using phenomena to drive that planning. We use that word a lot. Really important to keep using that word phenomena. Okay. And then, of course, it's using a smart design. It's working backwards. Okay. What will I use to determine what students have learned? What task is needed? What standards are the standards assessing? What standards are the task addressing? What are the enduring understandings? What are the essential questions that will drive the inquiry? What is the content? Where are the academic, the essential skills? Okay, define the assessment in deliverable terms, not just a general statement of what we want them to know and do anymore, the nitty gritty. We want students, okay, to write an argument to show they can create claims and support them with evidence. Now we want to spell it out. And as was mentioned earlier and so many times, it's like obviously so much of what we do today and what's happening in the world we are in now with COVID, there's so much engagement that these students can get into. And just like to thank you, and I'm going to sort of stop sharing in a second, and here's our contacts, and you can get them on our site also as you're going through the next few webinars. But anything else in terms of that you would like to get in touch with us or to hear more about this, we would love here we are back here. And are there any questions, or Sal, any question or anything else? I think we have about a minute left here. Okay, Sal, come join us.
Hi, Roy. I just want to say thank you so much for the presentation. I just want to make a few points. Every district that we've worked in, they use the template, the UBD template that Roy went over, and they all do it with their own little flavors. They add their own little seasoning to it, so they all look differently, but they're all addressing the key components, which is how do you integrate literacy, math, and the engineering practices into science. So we had the pleasure of working with Milwaukee. I know Ulises is on, so he's one of the architects of that first that work that we did. Thank you so much, Ulises, for being on. And if you feel free to contact us at any time, and we will guide your districts interdisciplinary to get started. So thank you again, Roy. Thank you, Kelli, for having us. And so we would like to say goodbye and continue enjoying the conference.
Enjoy it, everyone. Take care now.
All right. Thank you both, Roy and Sal. And I'm really glad because the work that the STEM Happens Network is doing is just spot on. And I will take a look at, yes, they do work in New York City. They work, throughout the country, around the globe, but they've really, they're making just an enormous impact there. And sometimes I get to be a part of that team, and it's just an honor and privilege.